Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Business Talks. I am your host, Chawanne Burns. In today's video, we are going to talk about or do a review of Candace Owens and Judge Joe Brown. Judge Joe Brown visited the Candace Owens show, and they talked about corruption, Kamala Harris, government corruption, that is. And then it was some bombshell news. I mean, the ties between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it gets pretty unreal, okay? This is what Judge Joe Brown revealed in this show when he was talking to Candace Owens. So I'm not going to reveal the information. I just want you guys to stay tuned and watch out for it, okay? So that's what we're doing on today's episode of Business Talks.
Something like this. Looks a little bit like I can't miss. Hey, this is what you call a bad. What? This is what you call a bad. Looks a little something like this. Looks a little bit like I can't miss. Hey, this is what you call a bad. What? This is what you call a bad.
You guys put in the chat, let me know where you're viewing from. I see we have Celeste Hodges in the building. Thank you for tuning in. She's tuning in from Texas. Kennard the DJ, what is good? It's always great to see you. Happy Tuesday to you. Kennard the DJ said, I am from the land of Link and cars, junkies, and car thieves called Chicago. Yeah, you know what? I came across the story. I might talk about this tomorrow. Little Dirk concert. They gave him the keys to the city like 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks ago, and he had this concert, and now a young boy was killed at his concert. Really heartbreaking. And one of the ladies that I follow on Twitter or X, she was saying that we give the keys to the city to commit more violence, to the individuals that they're not bringing, life to the city, but is to stir up violence. And I don't know. I'm not saying Little Dirk actually caused this, but hey, you get you're attracting those type of people to your event. Okay, so it's something is going on with our culture, and we really need to take a step back. Just because a person is making all types of money and they're black, hey, they match our skin tone, that doesn't mean they're for the people. So we need to stop promoting these people and Xing them out our community if they're not doing our community any good. Anyway, Zoisty 419, I'm not for sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but thank you for tuning in. Justin Thompson, thank you for tuning in. Good afternoon, everyone. Kerating is in the building. It's always great to see you from Waycross, Georgia. Valencia Ross is tuning in from Chicago. Joseph Young Jr., hello, Miss Chawanne, my queen, Detroit queen, but I am in Milwaukee now. Okay, it's not wrong with that. That's not too far away from Chicago. But what is good with you, or what up though, as we say in the 313. And James Watson, what up though to you? Hey there, I'm from Detroit as well. So it's always good to see you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, without further ado, we're going to get into it. You guys, I'm telling you, this is a 2-hour long video. I don't know if we're going to get through all of the video today. I think I'm going to say the latter part for tomorrow, because remember in my last live stream, not my very last live stream, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, I was talking about Kamala Harris and her people. I'm thinking Kamala Harris is starting to what we call a maturing candidate. I think she was manufactured in a lab. She's a real person, but I believe she was manufactured in a lab to take control of the United States, because she's easily manipulated. Okay. What I was saying, they're just putting a confirmation on what I was saying. And I believe that we have people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party for years now. Since the inceptions of parties, for years now, they've been being controlled by what we call, I guess, the deep state or whatever type of state, the grand establishment. I don't know what you want to call them. Some people call them the deep state. Whoever, the people that really controls the power, and it's not the president of the United States. This is why they're so gun-ho against Donald Trump, because you can't control him. He's not a neocon. He's not a warhead. Yesterday, your girl Kamala Harris, she got to rambling, talking about, don't forget, we don't want to isolate ourselves, and something she was repeating the talking points of Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, the guy who ushered us into war. And I guess she's gun-ho for war. I'm not for sure. So we have to be very wary about these candidates and what they're trying to present to us as, hey, this is the truest candidate that's going to save democracy. No, this candidate, and I'm speaking of Kamala Harris, she is just like any other candidate, like Barack Obama, like Joe Biden, like I can't say Bill Clinton, those other, Lyndon B. Johnson, very evil person, Lyndon B. Johnson, all these other candidates that they were wartime people. They love war. She's trying, and she is a puppet. Not the puppet master, she is a puppet. And somebody's pulling her strings. She's not that articulate. She's not that intelligent to make decisions on her own. So she is being manufactured, and she has to be manufactured for the black people to vote her in. Because, black people usually, we could change the trajectory of a candidate if we all agree on one page. Now, Judge Joe Biden or Judge Joe Brown and Candace Owens, they got something cooking. I can't just ignore what they're saying. And it's Judge Joe Brown, he's been in that area or era, and he has so much more years than we have. So you can't just turn a blind eye on what he's saying. Nobody said, oh, don't listen to this guy. Nobody's calling out for defamation. And he's been talking for a long time, but nobody's saying anything. But, he dropped some bombshells in this interview. So let's get started. I kind of fast forwarded the video to the point where they started talking about Kamala Harris. But let me just change the speed to, the speed is wrong. But we're going to get started.
Got that? No, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, hold on for a second. You guys put in chat, let me know that you could hear this video and see this video.
Do this because you'll get me for making a knowingly false statement. Screw you. I'll take the fifth on that. Or get me back. And they'd always manage to get you so they could take your phone book and get the numbers out of it. So you took to no longer carrying your black book with you because no telling when the FBI is going to pick you up. And by the way, I was the last judge on that James Earl Ray case, and I know what the FBI did. That quick summation to set the background. Ray had absolutely nothing to do with King dying. The FBI ordered that hit. They recruited a two-man sniper team, not one, from Quantico Marine Sniper School, which was right across the tarmac from the FBI school. They supplied the weapon, which is an XM21, which is a modified M14. I do have, in various places around the country, the serial numbers for the 5 of them they got on an invoice. Late December 1967, and 5,000 rounds of the ammunition that are identical in aspects to what they pulled out of King's body. The next thing is the Justice Department ordered them to return the 5 rifles. April 68, that's the month King was assassinated, and they claimed they lost one. That's the murder weapon. And I have the serial numbers for the 4 they did return, so they only made 63 of them at the time. So the FBI is suspect. This COINTELPRO developed later, but they had the SIS unit. And if anybody wants to read about that, get the Glass House tapes written by Louis Tackwood. Tackwood scared the hell out of me and a lot of other people. We knew him as supposedly somebody who had been a medic in the NOM, and he came back and he was treating people who got injured in the 60s. It was chaotic in those days. And I remember I was in law school and I went to watch this murder trial downtown LA, and they brought in, I said, that's Tackwood. Not only was he not a snitch, they introduced him as Lieutenant Louis Tackwood, Vice Commander of the SIS unit for LAPD. I was going, oh man, this dude knows everything, but he didn't tell on everybody. But this was real. And I know 15, 16 people that I was acquainted with that got shot to death who were active in these movement situations.
This has been a strange election. The Dems have made it apparent that they are zealous for the blood of babies. Kamala Harris is the first vice presidential candidate to ever visit an abortion facility. As First Things reported, and it's also very scary that they can do these things and then print out textbooks that say, oh no, this random guy did it, you know, like, so what was their reason? What was their obsession with wanting to infiltrate these movements?
They were concerned about what was going on in the NOM. There's a big hookup with everybody that we've been talking about, also Obama's people, Barry Soetoro's people, and the NOM. The idea, for instance, the memoranda we got a hold of with the King assassination thing, they were not worried about him starting civil rights back up. That was dead. Civil rights was dead and gone by the mid-1960s. It had been replaced by militancy, and the FBI memoranda, actually they were discussing whether he'd be more dangerous as a dead martyr or as a live somebody to galvanize the anti-war movement and revitalize labor. Those were the two things they were concerned about. I recruited John Huggins, Bunchy Carter, Geronimo Pratt, Elaine Brown, Nat Clark, and a few other people who were in the Panthers to UCLA back in the 60s. And it was the same thing with them. What were they going to do about getting people wrapped up in this militancy of saying, we're not going to be down on our knees while somebody beats us across the head anymore and somebody else feels guilty. We're going to do something about it. And I've seen the stories that came out of the assassination of John and Bunchy at UCLA. Hell, I was there. They ran right past me when not John, but his assassins are running right past me. They'd shot John in the back twice, and he died of that, but not before he set up and fired 6 shots at him, the guy that shot him, and 3 others running down the hallway. Elaine Brown and I were getting ready to go up some stairs when this went on. So it's interesting, the LAPD detectives that were investigating the homicides, they wound up calling some of us and say, could you meet us at, of all places, Denny's? Well, why not at the police precinct? Because it's not safe. Somebody on our side is not working on our side, they're working with something else. And we have cause to be fearful of our lives, meaning they, the detectives. So we would have these meetings in some weird places and we'd discuss stuff, and they'd say, you know, we're trying to make a bust, but only people that know are in our department. And when we get there, somebody's already told and
yeah, so that was a huge piece of that chaos book, was that it made me understand that the feds have people at the LAPD office that do the cleanups, that are watching everybody to see what they're investigating, and also at the medical examiner's office, the coroner's office, like making sure that the reports say what they want them to say so that they can present their case. I mean, he showed from top to bottom, like judges, lawyers, the LAPD. I would never live in LA after reading this book, because you realize it's just an entire operation. They can make you disappear, they'll kill you, and you'll be none the better. And that almost directly ties in with what we're learning about the Diddy case, which is like, okay, he knew who to call at the LAPD to come over and to make something disappear if things got out of hand or if somebody was shot or somebody got hurt. And so this has been going on, and I think this discussion is really important since the 60s. I've been really working hard for people to wake up about who your government is. But I'm fascinated that you say that you think it was about the war, because that really was my takeaway from that book, Chaos, was they needed the hippies generation to end, and having this big fake staged Hollywood murder that the CIA was actually involved in, and Charles Manson was a Fed, was a way to traumatize with propaganda, was to traumatize the public, the hippie communes, everyone's love, rock and roll, let's not go to war. And he basically said overnight, because of these horrific murders, people started locking their doors, they were afraid of hippies, and the music died that day. Nobody wanted anything with like peace, love, rock and roll, and LSD, because they were just all told that following this case, So we're talking about a psychological operation that was enacted on the public to create a mass psychosis, and you're virtually saying the exact same thing. What was their worry? Well, people didn't want to go to war, and they had war on the mind, and they wanted to get to war, and they couldn't have anybody who was militantly against it or peacefully against it, like the hippies were.
There's another cook-up too. We were talking about that rainbow thing. It's interesting how they got started. In the late mid-60s, they're going around all over the country talking about this, and it was a coalition of those who hated that they weren't men. Those were the feminists, the ones that hated men, some of the lesbians, the ones that hated that they weren't normal men, that were some of the gays, the ones that hated that they weren't strong men, the soy boys, so to speak. And then the big chunk was this other, hey man, war is a man thing, man. You know, it's all about love, man. We got to have love power, man, flower power. Men are about war. You have to change the way men are raised from boys so they're more into expressing themselves. So you got this thing there that had the overwhelming ballast, and that is the impetus for what led us to where we are now. And this was an important thing. It was an anti-man thing that developed because of this perception that men are responsible for war.
Yeah, you know, we do have this perception that men are responsible for war, but we tend to not look at, okay, so how many people do we have in power that are women? I think it's a bad perception. I guess toxic masculinity. That's toxic. If you remove the masculinity from a man, you could take control and control the man. You know, he's no longer able to think for himself, able to make decisions and confidently, right? If you're removing that masculinity feature from men, they can't make confident decisions. And they're going to get into talking about how they demasculated the black men first on purpose, because, you know, everyone wants to emulate the black culture, even the black man. So, hey, they're cool. You know, they walk and they talk. They have such extreme confidence. So if you demasculate that group of people first, then everybody else will follow.
Forget about the fact that we've got a large component of the military now, and some striving to be in combat arms that are female. But it was perceived to be a man thing, so no war toys, no cap guns, no water pistols. Boys and girls had unisex child clothing, child rearing. Boys are supposed to be able to emote, to cry, to shout, to let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under self-control. And the worst thing you want is the apex predator on the planet Earth to be out of control, which is exactly what they were setting up. And this thing came together, and it juxtaposed itself in a situation where Hollywood's movie studios were going bankrupt in the face of color television. A color TV up until the mid-60s, the screen looked just like this table. It was round and no bigger than that. And then they got square when the technology improved, so people were staying at home watching their color TVs. 1967, if you were an adult, you'd pay 50 cents to get in a movie, and you got 2 movies, and they changed every Thursday and Sunday, no matter how well they did. You got 3 cartoons and a couple of sub-features. Walk in anytime you wanted, stay as long as you wanted. So then somebody came up with the bright idea, let's just have one movie at a time, keep it playing as long as people will come. Let's go get the black markets, the minority markets. They want to see themselves. That's a massive amount of money out there. Let's start using the opportunity to spread dysfunction through glorification of it. We don't want Sidney Poitier playing a part where he's trying to be this and that. Let's get Fred the Hammer Williams to play a drug dealer like Black Caesar, so you glorify being a pimp, a hoe, and we'll come back to that in a bit. A gangster, a drug dealer, a murderer, a thief, and you got Foxy Brown with Pam Grier, and there was this whole thing where they'd have the obligatory naked, nude scenes in the whole thing, and the plot would be somebody got killed by somebody's drug dealers, and then so they wanted the revenge, and then they wanted to become drug dealers, and then you got Superfly and all of that nonsense, and you got glorification of dysfunction. And the theory that I heard was that young black men are supposed to be the epitome of masculinity, so let's effeminize them, and then you can effeminize the whole public, because the young white guys will try to copy the young black guys, and if you effeminize the young black guys, you get everybody in this mess. And then that led to what they did with the rap genre, which has been stagnant for 45 years. I mean, it's gotten more profane, but it hasn't changed.
But also it's exceedingly homosexual. I mean, everyone's gay.
Yes, it is. And the other thing is it's not very masculine, because some of the malinformed feminists say it's this sexual fantasy. That's not what you're looking at when you're looking at the half-naked bimbos bouncing on stage behind the rap artist in the gangster hip-hop rap video. That's not his girlfriend, that's his mama, grandmama, and their friend girls and their favorite aunts. So
yesterday, if you guys are not subscribed to my other channel, that was it's Chawanne Burns 2.0. We have my podcast is called Unpopular Opinion, and yesterday we spoke about Trina, and she brought on Young Miami. Young Miami got this bad BBL job. But, you know, if you go back to this BET Awards, you know, the dancers in the background, they basically had on underwear and fishnets and, you know, bouncing their butt. But Trina, you know, she had on Daisy Dukes. She was more conservative in her dress versus, you know, the ladies that was behind her. But Trina, what? She's pushing 50, and she has this, you know, this skankily clad clothes on, and then Young Miami is tied up to P. Diddy. P. Diddy, we speculated he was bisexual, but we now know he is bisexual and a predator. So they platform Young Miami instead of saying, hey, we got other Miami artists. They gonna platform her. You know, they couldn't find nobody else to platform. No, they had to choose her. All this debauchery in our culture. So, and this is what he's talking about. I'm not surprised by it. It's getting worse and worse. And I think it's never going to stop unless we really say no. The artist has to say, no, I'm not promoting that to my people. And then we have to say, no, we're not buying the music. That's the only way we will be able to stop this, I guess, circle of debauchery.
Oh, they ideate on feminist stuff like who's going to take care of me, and I got women I live of. I'm not a producer, I'm not a protector, and you got this whole downhill spiral, which is leading us to where we are right now, where there's no duty, honor, accountability, responsibility, bravery, courage. There's no guilt, no shame to keep you self-corrected and self-focused. You're not interested in making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics, and you're not dedicating yourself to being a man or a woman of public peace, dignity, and order. You just let it all go to hell, and you try to destroy all human character building things, because anything counts. Because if you have character, and let's say you're a man, that means if you happen to be on the Titanic and it goes down, you say, ma'am, you and your child may have my seat on a lifeboat. I'll drown in the freezing waters. What happens is you say, I've got on a dress too, so get out of the way, that's my seat. You know, yeah. No, take him and throw him over there and show him the sharks with him, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that they've kind of just continued, or they moved it on. I mean, it's a Fed operation, and then they realized the power of media, the power of Hollywood, the power of propaganda through the TV screen. And it's interesting to see that despite overwhelming evidence that that's what's happening in terms of the music, and I know I'm on the right track. As soon as you say, like, gangster rap is a Fed operation, as soon as you start talking about the Fed's involvement in Hollywood, the media goes crazy. The media has always been an extension of the Feds. They literally paid them. Operation Mockingbird, after they shot JFK, they had them on payroll to, control the masses and what they think. And yet you have people who are still so controlled. And I can't think of a better example of that than looking at the fawning over Barack Obama and the fawning over Kamala Harris and their belief that magically if a journalist writes that they're black and she creates this trove of fake photos of aunts and uncles and a photoshopped photo of her and her grandma Beryl, that's not her grandma.
She came back from the grave.
Yeah, exactly. Then suddenly people just believe it. They just go, oh, well, if the media is telling me that this obviously Hindu woman is black, then I better just accept that she's going to be the first black president. And it's just incredible that people can't stop and process that the media is not telling you the truth.
That's 50 years of glorification of dysfunction. Don't think, just accept. And it's a propaganda thing that they've been laying out there for a long time. And back in the 60s, if you were at the right college campus, you could hear them planning it. Like join both political parties to create chaos so that's a smoke screen you can operate behind. Okay, propagandize the public. Take the black experience. You want to be fair to the black folk in the country, so you extend that fairness to other things and you can use it as a cover. We can get into that later if you want to, but it's a farce and it's a bill of goods that's being sold on the public. Now, when you get into this whole thing and you get back to the FBI, you have to understand that the FBI is not a holy organization.
It's a gang.
How it came into existence. They wanted to get Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was the first black world heavyweight champion. Nobody could beat him. And back then, they'd have bouts 25, 30, 40 rounds worth till nobody was standing and nobody could beat him. And Jack Johnson had a white wife. So people objected to him traveling around with his white wife and her entourage, and they just thought this was just horrible. So they created the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, to go get something that became the Mann Act, which you can see them using on Diddy, and they used it on R. Kelly. I'm not defending either one of them or persecuting them either or prosecuting, but that's what they were using. So what happens is Jack Johnson and his wife were going across Georgia to go to a seaport to go to France, and they had gotten 15 minutes in when the FBI, who were not armed in those days, were accompanied by U.S. Marshals. They rushed the train and they arrested him. They prosecuted him, convicted him. He escaped. He went to France. His mother wanted to see him, and he tried to sneak back in. He got caught, served his time, actually more for the escape than for the offense, wound up dying in a car wreck in 1946. Obama wouldn't pardon him, but Trump did posthumously. And for a lot of older black folk, Jack Johnson was Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis in prototype. But that's how Hoover got started. He was assigned to the brothels in New York, and he was masquerading as one of those little special taste functions on the third floor. He was a cute little colored boy at the time. And by the way, Smithsonian Institution and the History Channel, they have gotten into him being black and passing. And J. Edgar Hoover. If you look, I'll show you some pictures.
Never heard this.
Oh, I'll show you some pictures. And if you look at it, you're looking at somebody that looks more black than Kamala does. So anyway, that's how the FBI came into existence, and they had made a career or a history, and with this guy in charge for 50-some years, of being very political and keeping things under control. That was his game. World War I, he started doing this anti-German thing. Then it became anti-communist, and after World War I, when they had prohibition, they got assigned the task of keeping track of legitimately produced alcohol, which was why FBI agents were supposed to be either certified public accountants or attorneys specializing in tax. Yeah, really right in there, macho, gunslinging law enforcement. No, that's why they had special agents like Melvin Purvis and Elliot Ness, and they were stone cold killers, and they'd each been responsible for taking 15, 20, 30 lives, and they were made special agents. Interestingly enough, all of them seemed to have committed suicide within a 6-month period in 1949. I guess they found out what Hoover was, but that's another thing. So
Hoover was very into some weird sexual stuff,
yeah,
which is another thing, but also a part of this thing, because more and more we're realizing that sexual perverts are put into positions of power. And
they have a certain viciousness about what they do.
This is not Kamala. Don't know what type of her sexual preference are. I'm assuming she's just a straight woman. But when we talk about Puff Daddy, okay, sexual perversion, okay, he's into some weird, freaky stuff. He likes to basically catching. his victim, meaning, hey, I'm going to sedate you. I'm going to catch you and then I'll sedate you and I could do whatever I want to you. Man, woman, child. Doesn't matter. He likes it all. No preference at all with Puff Daddy. And look how powerful he got. He was able to give life to Jennifer Lopez's career. She's not a great singer, but remember the video that I shared with you yesterday. If you watched that Unpopular Opinion live stream, the video I shared with you, she was up there at the VMA Awards and she was like, oh my God, Puff, can you believe this? And they get handed her a VMA Awards, and this woman has no talent. Now, I believe she could act, but as far as singing, no. Dancing, yes. Singing, no. So he was able to, since he was put in that position of power, he was able to usher people's career into really high heights. I'm saying all this to say, you notice Sean Combs, he has no compassion. He has no sense of, hey, I feel sorry. I have no compassionate bone in my body. I feel nothing. That's Puff Daddy. That's Sean Puffy Combs. And we saw the video that he beat up Cassie, and he act like it was another Tuesday when he smacked her up and kicked her like a dog, punched her and choked the hell out of her. He act like it was another Tuesday, and he does this on a regular basis. And he does, because he has no sense of compassion or no type of morals to him.
Lack of connection with tomorrow. So,
and a lack of connection with people. And when he said tomorrow, this goes to Kamala Harris. I don't have connection with people because I ain't never birthed a child. So I could do, when she talk about the stroke of my pen, I could change people's lives with the stroke of my pen. She really means that. Because she has not put any energy in flowering a subject, meaning your children, even if you're adopted, even if you adopt a child, raising a child from a baby or a toddler up. No connection. She has no, what is it called? Investment in the future. Why? So why would I have any compassion? I don't care. I don't have people that type of legacy that's I'm gonna leave America to. No legacy, because I didn't raise none of these kids. These kids ain't mine. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. They're going to tell me what to do, and I'm just going to do it.
Boom. They are ruthless. Not all of them, but a lot of them are very ruthless. They don't have much concern for other people, and they lack altruism, the willingness to sacrifice for others. So
he was definitely a homosexual and a cross-dresser.
Yes.
So we're against, and I'm only saying this because this is becoming a bit of a theme. You know, I've been looking into the Emmanuel Macron situation, wife situation as well. Barack Obama had a he had a trans nanny growing up that his mother was okay with. I didn't even know this was like mainstream news years ago. I just learned it. And so we're starting to see, like, it isn't possible in my mathematical opinion, that the odds are that all of these people that go on to become presidents or to these tremendous positions of power have these weird sexual perversion backgrounds, sort of upbringings. We're starting to see a little bit of a theme here, which kind of makes, I think, a person that has the capability to think on their own wonder, is this a global operation to just kind of seed people into positions of power, and the world is just a stage?
It's a family thing.
It's a family thing.
Have you ever heard of Samuel Hinckley?
Is he related to John Hinckley? No.
Hinkley, Hinkley. Look him up.
Is he related to the Hinckley that shot?
No. remotely, but he had 7 of his descendants who were U.S. presidents, one who was a U.S. vice president, one who was governor of Alaska, one who several billionaires. And what you find is, if you look up Samuel Hinckley, they will note some of his more interesting modern relatives or descendants. So here's the way it breaks down. Lolo Soetoro.
This is Barack Obama, just so everyone's watching, that's Barack Obama's stepfather, who he was raised with for the first 8 years of his life.
Okay, well, the rest of his life afterwards, Barry Soetoro has an interesting situation. His mother, on his maternal side, his grandfather was first cousin to President George Herbert Walker Bush. So George Herbert Walker Bush, George Walker Bush, Dick Cheney, vice president, they're all cousins. Sarah Palin is a cousin. Barack Obama is a cousin. George Herbert Walker, who founds Halliburton, is Uncle Herbie to all of them. And interestingly, when he was running against John McCain's running partner was his cousin, Sarah Palin, who was governor of Alaska. Real unholy alliance, right? So other thing is the Bushes for the last 150 years have been supplying international intelligence, and they were into what they call paper entrepreneurialism. They would acquire businesses and sell the components off. Uncle Herbie founded Halliburton, had something to do with Enron as well, which was energy development. Lolo Soetoro was international executive vice president for Standard Oil, and he was in the oil business, but he also ran the death squads for the Indonesian army.
Oh, it's funny because when you look him up, it just says that, like, you know, what do they say, that no, he was an engineer? Whatever they say, it's like he did. They make it seem like he did. Oh, he was a geographer. That's what it says. It says that he was a geographer who did some work for the government.
I had a brother who was into that, and then the oil petroleum production was part of it. Anyway, you get Lolo Soetoro running the death squads for the Indonesian government, so that meant you had money. Indonesia might have had access to the world's largest oil reserves as they were perceived at the time. So Standard Oil used his muscle and his position to take over the oil industry in Indonesia, which they couldn't do under American law. So George Herbert Walker Bush, under the auspices of Uncle Herbie, George Herbert Walker, sets up Zapata Oil. They have a family holding company, Zapata Offshore Oil, which was chartered in Kuwait, by the way. Keep that in mind. And what winds up happening is George Herbert Walker, dealt with Lolo Soetoro quite frequently on oil deals. And remember, George Herbert Walker becomes chief of the CIA under the Ford administration, and he deals with their #1 contract guy over in Asia, which when the NAM was going on, Lolo ran intelligence for the CIA under contract in China, North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia. So Barack's grandmother hustles her daughter, who was 17 at the time, into a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship with Barack Obama Sr., who was being recruited from Kenya to offset Jomo Kenyatta in the Mau Mau. That was a CIA project. Grandmommy was vice president of a Hawaiian bank, and she distributed the funds for the CIA in the South and Northwest Pacific at the time.
That explains what they were doing out in Hawaii.
She puts him together with her daughter, who was 17 years old. Barack is born, and then they quickly go their separate ways, and then grandmommy gets daughter and hooks her up with Lolo Soetoro. And remember, grandmommy is married to President Bush's first cousin. So
that's incredible.
That's where you get this, and then you get...
So Barack Obama's grandmother, the one who raised him in Hawaii, is married to, so his grandfather is married to...
in other words, the grandfather is Bush's
first cousin.
Yeah, and they're all nephews to Uncle Herbie, who founded Halliburton in 1946 in Oklahoma. It had previously been chartered under that name in 1919 in Oklahoma, but it went defunct, so he revived it.
So it's
Can you believe this? Remember, Barack Obama said last week, we shall elect Kamala Harris because she grew up like us and she had the same experience as us. Barack is from a wealthy family. Well, we knew that. Barack is from the wealthy family because of this Sotoro individual that married his mom. And he's connected to the Bushes. Twice removed, 3 times removed, I guess you would call it. That's why him and Bush is chummy, because they're relatives. They're actually relatives. They what, fourth cousins? Third cousins?
It's actually quite interesting that you're saying that, because when I began this investigation into Kamala, before I had even presented it to the public, I was just seeing what was already out there. And there was this random person who wrote a blog piece 10 years ago, saying that, and I thought it was crazy when I read it, but he said that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden share a grandfather. And I went, like, that's so wacky. And so what are you talking about? But then as we started realizing...
that's on the Irish side.
Right. The same last name, Finnegan. They actually are all Finnegans, and they both kind of have, once you get to granddad stage, it gets a little shady, is what I'll say. She's lying about things. Her dad's lying about things. I can't quite figure out, we can't find a picture of the real Beryl. We know that Beryl had a sister who was very, very white, and actually the name that she gives us, Patrick Al-Nahanus Finnegan, doesn't seem to exist. So we're lying about a grandparent somewhere, and then when I started looking into Biden's side, I was doing it this weekend, things are pretty shady there too. I'm just kind of at the beginning of this, but, it's like his great-grandfather, same situation, like the parents both died at very young ages. One was an alcoholic. It's always like the parents somehow go missing, and then the grandparents, he also was really raised and formed by his grandparents. So it's getting interesting, especially when you consider what the world was, which I think is something that people don't do. People always want to apply the logic to today, and they don't realize how things were back in the 60s or back in the 40s, how easy it was to fake documents, how easy it was to move into different countries.
Yes.
And I had Kamala's family relative tell me that you could literally just walk into the office in Jamaica and say, make a birth certificate. It was just very easy to get things done in that way.
Very. And see, the other thing, too, is you, with your situation, you are well aware of the Commonwealth, right? Okay. Your in-laws. All right. Now, that was Hong Kong, Singapore, that was Nigeria, that was Kenya, South Africa, that was Pakistan, that was India, that was Jamaica, man. That was the Bahamas, that was Barbados, that was New Zealand, that was Australia. So I used to get to Jamaica an awful lot. So you hear somebody, hey man, everything gonna be all right, man, I man, speaking patois, and you turn around and there's somebody Chinese talking like that. Oh wow, well see, it's the British Commonwealth, before that the British Empire, so everybody travels freely around there. Now I have a friend that's married to a Jamaican. She was born in Jamaica, so were her parents, but she's English aristocracy, and I won't mention the name, but they're related to the English royals. She's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and she was born in Jamaica because her aristocratic parents just happened to be over there, and they were born when their aristocratic English nobility parents were born in the place. So it's an interesting thing when you see that, and it's St. Elizabeth Parish where all of the high, bright, and white Jamaicans are, and it's an interesting little hookup. So we get an international thing, but there is a family situation that gets in here. And Kamala's folk were trying to get in on it through the mother because they were Hindu. Now, the dad said his background is Irish and also from India, the Hindu thing, and he became a Marxist because that was what was going on back when he was coming of age in the early 1960s. Now, when you get this in place, you run into the fact that there are family situations. Now, when I was in Hollywood, I made a whole lot of money. I had places all over the country, and I had 2 places in Aspen, Colorado. So my ex was a social climber, and she was a ski instructor up in Aspen, of all things. So everybody wanted to go skiing with Mrs. Brown in the backcountry. So we wound up meeting billionaires and really multi-millionaires. And it's interesting because there are these family connections that are not obvious, except when you walk around Aspen. It's awful. Everybody starts at 6'1" for the females and gets up to these guys that all look like Adonis, that are these great athletes. It's like, damn, man, they've been breeding, smart and, good looking and athletic. And they all have these interesting relationships with each other that aren't obvious and that they don't make public. You had, starting with the Adams family, you had President Adams and his son, President Adams. You had the Roosevelts, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You had the Kennedys, and and then they had muscle because Joe Kennedy Sr. was a gangster. He was a bootlegger, and he used
That's how they established Hollywood, by the way. It was a bunch of gang members that established Hollywood. The bootleggers went in there, carnies.
Yeah, I'll tell you some stuff off the record about that. So it's like you get this whole thing, and then you get the Bushes in here, and then you have the Clintons who are newbies into this whole thing, and now you have some other stuff that's going on, these peripherals.
Well, it's funny you say that the Clintons are newbies, though, because even like Bill Clinton has like a weird story. Like his dad was killed in a car accident when he was like 2. It's like once you start looking into their genealogy, they all kind of have like these weird tragic stories, and then they're just kind of become the president. And I'm like, okay, well, I've lived around a lot of people who have like don't have a dad. Like they don't really go on to like go to Harvard and Yale and become president. So it's like it just makes you wonder like what is actually happening here.
And then you find something else. Look at Barack Obama. What kind of connection does Barack Obama or Barry Soetoro have with the United States? He's got a long history through his mother's side of the family. They were slave owners, and 2 of his ancestors were Confederate officers during the Civil War. One even rode with Cantrell, the guerrilla up in Kansas, in Missouri. He's got a connection. But even if you get away from whether or not Kamala is black, what connection does she have with the United States? Probably the least out of any candidate for president in this country's history. So you have a situation where her parents have academic visas. They're transitory. They have no intention of being permanent residents or citizens. It's passing through. And she lies a lot about it, but you've seen that, when she got to Canada, how old she was, and that's her background.
Graduated from high school, wealthy, Canadian.
The whole 9 yards. And she doesn't have that American vibe where you from elementary school are taught about what this country's supposed to be about. You have this thing where it's part of the Commonwealth, so they're subjects. Now, you probably have talked to your husband about that, and your father-in-law, the Earl, and they view this whole thing about being subjects in a different way than we here in the States view about being a citizen.
It's very different. Across the pond is very different.
Very different, but that's the background with Kamala, the way she was brought up. And you get the feeling that somebody is trying to become part of something, but they don't want anybody with any real connection. The more isolated they are, the more they're subject to convenient control. Today is tomorrow, which is why yesterday is tomorrow.
This is why Kamala can't make connections with the American people. This is why Kamala has problems articulating how she really feels. The speeches that she tries to purvey, that she's all passionate about the American people. I'm so passionate about the American people, their dreams and aspirations and their goals and their ambitions. I'm so passionate. And this is a democracy. And in a democracy, we must, the fakeness, because she has no time. She really, yesterday, matter of fact, I got a video dropping in a few minutes. Yesterday, I was talking about how, matter of fact, I need to change it actually. Yesterday, I was talking about how Kamala, she is antichrist and anti-American. And reason why I'm saying that is because you can't make you try to disparage a person that says Jesus is Lord. Okay, who says that? I mean, who absolutely, a black person, Jesus is Lord. Unless, I talk to people that's what is it called, atheists, and black people that are atheists. But they'll tell you, they're not with it, and they ain't trying to hear it. That's not a problem. But you have Kamala a week prior saying, "Hey, I'm I was born in a black church, and I know about God is good all the time, all the time God is good, blah blah blah. And then a week later you're saying, "Hey, you at the wrong rally." You at the wrong rally because they said Jesus is Lord. Do you understand? Antichrist and anti-American, because she has no connections or ties here. She's just the subject. These people are subjects to her. She's just been inserted in the quote unquote black community. You go to my last video and I talked a little bit about that. Kamala Harris and her parents were inserted in the black community. Yes, she went to church, but this lady, she found her way to see this nanny. What person has a nanny when they mama going out of town? A black person. She has this nanny that takes her to this black church, and so she's so familiar with the black community. She participated in all these uprisings and these civil rights movement events. Come on now. And y'all still in my chat. I see some still fools in the chat putting thumbs down, talking about Kamala is black. Y'all need to wake up. Somebody needs to come to your house, do a couple of smacks on your face to wake you up, get you out this trance, because this is like right in front of your face and you still refuse to believe that the media and the government is lying to you. You can't tell me that Kamala, mediocre person, mediocre. We could say Kamala Harris is mediocre. I just read a newspaper clipping that, how Donald Trump was slamming Kamala Harris, saying, oh, she didn't pass the bar exam. It took her 2 times to pass the bar exam. Kamala Harris was incepted in the law school off this program that she was supposed to be, I guess, marginalized person, a person that's low income family and from, I guess, the black community. Remember, you guys, I've been talking about this for so long. Remember, I told you guys, and I didn't actually research it. It just came across my feed. Somebody put a newspaper clipping about this LEPC program. It's called LEPC program, and she was admitted into law school under this program. Reason why Kamala Harris didn't pass the bar exam, because not only she didn't have the grades to get in law school, she didn't have the LSAT exam to get in law school. She's not mediocre Kamala. So Antichrist Kamala, anti-American Kamala, Kamala Skamala, and mediocre Kamala. She doesn't have the aptitude to pass the bar exam because she wasn't even supposed to be there. And she took another person's spot. She was a DEI. People mad that we use the word DEI with Kamala Harris. She's literally the epitome of DEI. She got her law degree because of DEI. She got all these jobs because she slept her way to the top. And I didn't know, I just found this out, that Kamala Harris didn't have an opponent when she was running for Senate. She didn't have nobody racing against her. So of course she's going to win because she didn't have an opponent. So, and you Negroes in my inbox saying, oh, why you going to vote against your own people? This ain't your people. This is a maturing candidate. Kamala Harris is manufactured. Hello, she was manufactured. I can't believe it. You guys go to my Twitter account. Follow me on Twitter, and I'm going to post the information that I found, the newspaper clippings. I'll post it this afternoon, and I'll post it on YouTube as well. But literally, Kamala Harris is the prime example of when DEI goes wrong. This is why we shouldn't have DEI, because she's the prime example. Prime example. She shouldn't even have a law degree. She took somebody else's spot. Okay, if we agree with DEI and affirmative action, she took somebody else's spot because Kamala Harris was a privilege. And then she was a privileged individual. We already know that. And then I guess her mom got mad because whoever posted this, they had found another newspaper clipping. Her mama saying, oh, I guess they thought my daughter wasn't privileged. That's what she told the newspaper. Oh, Kamala grew up very well. She didn't say in those words, but basically she said, oh, my daughter ain't marginalized or, grew up in a poor neighborhood. She ain't poor. That's what, what's her name? Gopelin? That's what she said. Epitome of DEI. Okay, I'll stop and I'll keep on playing this stream. But you guys, don't get out the inbox saying stop going against your own people. Kamala Harris is not your own people. Barack Obama is not your people. They not like us. They're not like
for your blackification, but it's a bit weird.
You're getting there. See, the other thing is, vote black if you're black, so you don't deal with the qualifications. You just vote skin is kin. But the problem is, she's lying about that. But the other problem is, and I don't have anything against it, you're supposed to vote for her because she's black, but she's got a white husband. So the bottom line is if she can sleep with the white husband, then you can vote for a white man for president without any feelings of guilt.
Right.
So they're trying to rely on you got to be this, that, and the other. And one of the things that gets me is this conditioning thing. 50 years worth of propaganda to prepare for where you're going right now with this rainbow cult they're trying to impose as sort of an official cult or faith for the country. You also have something else going on. The Democratic Party was founded in the second decade of the 19th century for the purpose of protecting and spreading slavery. It perfected the art of enslavement. And one of the things that I found most scary about this, I worked for a DC think tank more than a half century ago, and we studied this. And I remember having to read the slave pamphlets that were on microfilm in the Library of Congress. And one of the secrets to the enslavement process was put the elements of slavery into the Negro's culture so they would teach slavery to themselves without realizing it. So what's happening is this party of the slave masters that put this process in place has used it for something else. They don't grow cotton anymore. But there's a plantation, but they make rainbows on this plantation, and they evoke the elements of the slave culture that are in place to get the Negroes to vote for them without thinking about it. And the person they put in becomes most vulnerable to being isolated. Hillary Clinton, for example, came from a very interesting family, Rodmans. They were staunch Republicans. She was a cheerleader for Goldwater, one of the Goldwater girls. She was chairwoman of the Young Republican chapter at Wesley All-Girls University for 3 years as a Republican until she met Bill Clinton. So then she switches over. But I find that very interesting for somebody to be saying it's okay for Hillary to flip-flop on the parties. But Hillary was always a wannabe, and her parents were very much middle class, and she wanted to get outside of that. And she had a history of really downing her husband, Bill Clinton, because of his low origins. But Clinton was a smart man. And she was somebody that was isolated because she had no real connections to anything. So she became somebody that was subject to manipulation. You also have Kamala, which, by the way, is the name of a Hindu goddess, and it's not a black name. It's a Hindu name. And you've got her, she's isolated because who are her relatives? You know one of her relatives by marriage. His name is Jussie Smollett, the one that got caught up with that fraud thing. He's her nephew by marriage. Okay? You get this little picture, a family connection and the noose around the neck. And by the way, I interviewed several Chicago detectives and police on that, and I happen to know one that's a cop. He's back in the DMV area now. And Jussie and the bunch had been planning this for months, and they used to discuss it at this particular athletic club, and everybody knew it. And they got pictures of Jussie Smollett buying this noose during Halloween season at a costume shop. They've got it on video, and on security cameras, you can see him putting the noose around his own neck. And he had met with Kamala just before that, and she and Cory Booker, this is the same day when he flew into Chicago, they had been working on something that Conyers came up with in 1997 that is now modified and introduced as the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill.
Wow.
Remember the neck?
Yes.
And the whole thing, they went off and then they had to withdraw it because of the fraud that came out.
Wow.
Well, see, this is something they're trying to do. And maybe this will give you an idea of how they're sneaking around here. The Emmett Till anti-lynch bill has nothing to do with black people.
No bill they put up has anything to do with black people.
No.
Or just the headline. But then when you read it.
The headline does.
Yeah.
But what it does is it puts into the American federal criminal laws for the first time sexual orientation as a victim category for criminal offenses. Now, when you think of a lynching, you think of a mob killing somebody, right? Well, the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill, one, doesn't require a mob. It can be one person. It doesn't even require a homicide. You can kidnap somebody or beat somebody. And how does that play out? What happens, let's say you have a guy who's broken up with his girlfriend or his wife, and he's feeling down, and some of his friends say, hey man, let's go to the club. So he goes to the club with his homeboys, and he's dancing with this PYT, pretty young thing, in a tight, short dress, big boobs, hoop earrings, braids, you know, down her back, and they're having a good time, exchanging spit over in the shadows and drinking wine. And then he looks down, man, you got a heart, what are you? You got a heart on. And he busts him in the mouth. Now that's federal lynching.
Wow.
So what they did with it, you see this bait and switch. Also, look at the Black Caucus. They love Kamala because she's just as big a fake as they are. If you examine the voting records for the Black Caucus, you will find something very interesting.
Is it really the Rainbow Coalition?
Yeah, because they're a member of the Liberty Caucus, which is the LGBTQIA plus caucus in Congress. I think all but 4 or 5 of them. and they do more work for the Liberty Caucus than they do for the Black Caucus. Now, we have in Memphis, for the 9th District of Tennessee, we have Steve Cohen. He's white, he's Jewish, he's gay, and guess what? He is chairman of the Black Caucus's Reparations Committee. So he's also holds that same position for the Liberty Caucus. So what is this? When you look at 5 years ago, they had that circus for 2 weeks about whether to have a formal committee set up.
Not to cut him off, but if you really think about the anti-lynching bill, how preposterous it is, okay? It doesn't require a homicide. Well, let's go back. Jussie Smollett, or Woosie Smollett, is kin to Kamala. I'm assuming through marriage, through her sister. I'm assuming that's how they are akin to each other. But let's think about this. So I guess they were trying to make this stage event so they could get the media, a media frenzy, like, oh, we need to pass this anti-lynching bill, okay? Nope, nobody's being lynched in 2024. That's not what they're doing. That's why we have guns. Hey, you in my territory, or I hate Negroes, so I'm gonna shoot you. I'm not gonna string you up by a tree. Takes too much work. You might be fighting me back. You might run away. So why would I do that? You could look up the number of people that's been lynched, and they do have data on the number of people. Probably one person a year since 1960. You got maybe two, it was a peak, or maybe four was a peak. This was way back, maybe 40 years ago. There were some zeros in there. And then I think one was last year. They might have one this year because of that one boy that was found. But I'm not for sure. But if you really think about the anti-lynching bill, like Judge Joe Brown, has nothing to do with lynching. It has everything to do with your sexual orientation. Like every other anti-bill they have out here. Sexual orientation has nothing to do with your color of your skin. Don't they have a bill out there for anti-racism or something like that bill? Stop Asian Hate Bill. What was that called? Has nothing to do with Asians, you guys. It has everything to do with sexual orientation. Don't Say Gay Bill. Everything to do with your sexual orientation. Why are they trying to protect people based off of sexual orientation, number one? What is the purpose of that? So Jussie Smollett was just a tool in the greater scheme of things. For one, because you had to identify it with the Trump supporter, number one, because Trump is the racist, raging racist that's inciting violence. That was one. And number two, we got to get this bill passed. Now, as far as Cory Booker, I don't know if Cory Booker is gay or not. I know he does. Well, they never married, but they've been dating a long time to that actress. I think her name is Rosario. You know who I'm talking about, Rosario. She's like Latina or something like that. But he's been dating her for quite some time, but I don't know if they ever got married. Maybe because he's afraid of commitment, or maybe because he's gay. I'm not for sure. But it's interesting to see. I have to do some of my research about the Black Caucus and the Liberty Caucus, because he's saying majority of the Black Caucus are a part of the Liberty Caucus, and they have a different sexual orientation besides heterosexual.
to study reparations, and then 2 weeks later, on the first voice vote, no debate, they passed what's known as, quote, the Gay Reparations Act.
Okay, so this is what we're doing is we're using black people as a smokescreen to allow
and that's what they're doing with
LGBTQ
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
You take a significant voting group that has emotive needs and cravings to belong, and here you give them an opportunity to identify with somebody who has absolutely no connections with them. Even if it was black, she's not somebody who has a prior generation in America. She is the immigrant herself because her parents were not immigrants. She is the immigrant. And by a technical call, she's qualified to run for president. See, the Constitution defines citizenship in two places. One,
Birth.
how to be a citizen, and two, qualifications for being president or vice president. So technically, you can be a citizen, but you can't be president like, say, Cruz down in Texas. He ran, but nobody brought it up. He was born in Canada, so he was not born on American soil. But see, Kamala was born in the same hospital my ex-wife was born in when my now late mother-in-law was a paternity nurse in that same hospital. So she's born on American soil. So I don't think they had any intention of having somebody just come in right there in getting in that easy way, but she matches the bare bones qualifications. But you get somebody like that, they're easy to manipulate and control because they've got no connections with this place.
I think it's quite a tell that Kamala doesn't have any children of her own. It's something that I think is concerning. I know that the left freaked out and Taylor Swift posted a picture of her with a cat when J.D. Vance accurately said that you don't want a bunch of like childless cat ladies running things. And I agree with that. And I also agree that, similarly in the exact same vein, that it is concerning when you have basically a coalition of childless cat women and so many homosexual men, people like Cory Booker. I don't know if everybody knows he's homosexual, but and in these positions of power who are informing policy very removed from a certain kind of compassion. And I know people, they tried to make it seem like you meant, oh, women that are struggling with fertility issues. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people that have zero inclination, desire toward family, but they want power, right? And it genuinely scares me when I think about this because they are naturally nihilistic. Where they gain that power and that assertion from within themselves, to me, is quite. And their ability to inflict pain. You know, I did a lot of translating, the pieces that the journalist that exposed Emmanuel Macron's upbringing and the fact that his wife was actually born a man. He spoke about this at length, about when you have someone who was raised up like this, someone who was sexually assaulted when he was young, introduced to sort of these perverted sexual things. We're talking about so much sexual perversion in the government. Their ability to inflict pain on others almost knows no bound. There's an element of a sociopathic nature that's instilled in them at a very young age. And I think we have too many of these sociopaths that are in government. Their ability to lie. Like I say to people, pause. Forget what you think about Kamala, whether you're voting for her, whether you're not voting for her. We've now established as a fact that she put a fake woman in her book and tried to present this black woman as her grandmother. What kind of a person
would do that?
Yes. Like, do you think about what that takes to find the photo, whether it's photoshopped, whether it's a photo of you with a different person, whatever. You put it in your book, you lie. You are sealing the identity of a black person, knowing that actually you descend from slave owners, right? And you feel nothing. And you keep this up because you realize nobody's fact-checked it. You're going around, you're trying to blackify yourself, and you feel nothing. What does that tell you about what that person is capable of? They don't have basic morality.
Ruthless, unprincipled person. And you pointed this out earlier. What happens when you have no legacy? You don't have any interest in continuity. You're not thinking like you do when you have children, grandchildren, or when you adopt somebody who is actually a child and you participate in raising them. Mm-hmm. And I hate to do this as an analogy, but dogs are part of our families, right? People love their dogs, but you didn't have the dog, you adopted the dog. Well, if you adopt a child, that becomes your child. You raise that child. Now, she adopted 2 teenagers, which, that doesn't count. They're already grown.
Who adopted a teenager?
She adopted her husband's 2 children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
No.
So what happens is, what is her stake in tomorrow? I mean, if you went out and you adopted a 9-month-old, a 1.5-year-old, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and you're raising them, you've got an interest in tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But you see, that's like that example I gave you of, you come down the jungle trail with an antelope across your shoulders and you see this war party about to fall on your village. Nobody's looking. Do you sneak off or do you sound the alarm and maybe die to sacrifice for your village and your people and your descendants, or do you just turn around and run?
Kamala turns around and runs.
Yeah.
She has no stake in
no stake in this. And her connections are suspect, but her connections make her vulnerable. It's like, I was in California when a lot of this was going on, and she and Willie Brown got detailed in the LA Times and the San Francisco Chronicle a lot about what they were doing. So you're...
Before he get into that, he's absolutely right. Candace Owens is absolutely right. You have no stake in tomorrow. You haven't raised no kids. You haven't birthed any kids. You didn't even adopt kids. You adopted basically grown children. So you probably don't give a shit what happens to them, maybe a little bit, but it's different. And I don't know how many women that's in the audience that have birthed children. It's different. Even if you adopted children, it's different. It's different when you say, hey, I'm going to sacrifice all my partying, sacrifice my body because I want a family. I want a family and I want a future. I want a legacy. Even men, oh, I want her to bear my children. I want a legacy. I think you got to be something special to say, hey, I don't want children. It's something special. Something is, I don't know. I think it's kind of evil when you say, I just want to be so selfish. I don't want to ever have a family. I just want to roam this big old earth by myself and not even raise anything, not even take care of a pet. You don't even want to take care of a flower. You're just like the spawn of evil. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but yesterday I was kind of preaching about, Kamala Harris is always, pushing this reproductive rights, i.e. abortion, right? Abortion to say, hey, just kill off your seed. You want to kill off and not take the responsibility. A person that's pushed this so much, and this is a female, we're trying to go against the very design that what God intended us to do. Now, if you antichrist, you don't believe that. You don't believe that God designed you to have children. And some women are unfortunate, can't have children, and they really want it. I'm not talking about those children or those people. I'm talking about the people that are anti-family, anti-having babies. And they just look at children like, ew. Yeah, I don't want that. You just don't have no connection with the world or humankind or the human race. You just off on your own. So why should we have this person in power or making decisions for us? I wouldn't. That's a person that doesn't even have the capacity to love. Like he said, are you going to ring the bell and sound the alarm to say, hey, the enemy is coming and sacrifice yourself? Or are you going to be duck and run in the woods and run for cover because you're trying to save yourself and let all your people die? Kamala Harris will run and hide. She's not going to sacrifice herself.
In your 20s, and this is 30 years ago, and you're getting paid $72,000 a month for showing up at 2 meetings a month, maybe 15 hours for the month, and everybody else on this panel that you're on is 65 to 70 years old with a lifetime in medicine, and you have absolutely no medical background, and you're getting paid $72,000 a year because you're a mistress to somebody that's 60 years old and has put you in there, and then he gets you sort of promotion to another aspect of the same setup, and you get $120,000 a year for showing up for 2 meetings a month, and she misses 20% of them. And this is 30 years ago. $120,000 30 years ago is making $250,000 now.
Wow. And people need to know this is the true story of Kamala. People aren't making this up because it's election season. You can go back and read the article in the LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle. I've read them. They were basically like, this woman is sleeping around and she's making a ton of money. You know, she slept with Willie Brown and he's just putting her into yeah, that's right, putting her into positions of power.
And then there's the other thing too. They talked about how she got on with the DA's office in Alameda County and also some other things, and even getting to be U.S. Senator, which I found very peculiar because, you know, now senators are elected by constitutional amendment. They used to be appointed by the states. She is the first person, the only person in California's history to run with no Republican opponent for U.S. Senator.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, see, it's interesting, the whole 9 yards. And then there's another suspect thing, One West Bank. George Soros was the major investor in One West Bank. Mnuchin, later the Obama administration, and for 1 year in the Trump administration before he got fired, he was CEO. This is when they were having that mortgage foreclosure fraud situation. All right? I had 3 neighbors lost their properties behind this fraud. So just about every county in California returned indictments against Mnuchin and One West Bank. There were 5,200 plus counts of indictments returned. 5,200. Well, Soros and Mnuchin raised a lot of money for Kamala, quite a few $1 million for her to run for the office of Attorney General of the state of California. When she got elected, she used her authority to consolidate all of these indictment counts and dismiss them. 3 weeks later, George Soros sells One West Bank for $3.42 billion. And then they raised a lot of money to get her elected as U.S. Senator without Republican opposition. Now, can you imagine California with no Republican candidate running against the Democratic Party candidate? Incredible. See, that's how she gets in. And at that point, she was Indian.
Oh, yeah. She was sworn in as Indian.
Yeah. So she wasn't talking about being black. I find something else, too. If you're part white and you're part black, what are you as far as Americans concerned? You're black.
You're black.
You're part Asian and part black. America takes you as black. So how does she get to be Indian, recognized as such, if she's got black in her? She doesn't.
No, she's without question Irish Indian. There's no question about it. She's Irish Indian.
You get this mythology in, but she's easy to control because, A, she's lazy. I know a lot of lawyers, now senior members of a firm that I recruited to law school way back when at UCLA back in early 70s. And they'll tell you, she was not one that put in a lot of work when she prepared for a case. She'd shorten a hymn up every day of the trial, and somebody's supposed to be impressed. And we have somebody that counted on other people doing the work, and she did the casting couch thing to get to the top. But at the top, what are you going to do?
Exactly. If you're not
going to
qualified.
deal with Putin? He's probably got something waiting in the far wing of the Kremlin that looks a lot better than this 60-year-old woman. Xi Jinping, you know, he's going to be inscrutable and no.
Well, you even saw when Putin sat down with Tucker, he was very clear. He's like, I don't deal with your presidents. He heavily implied it's just a show, and I deal with the CIA. Like, your presidents are not running the country. I deal with the CIA. And this was why the media freaked out when Tucker was going out there, because this is kind of, I think now, a known thing that the people that purport to be in charge are just puppets, and there's people behind the scenes that are pulling the strings. And it seems like that is very much the military-industrial complex. We're talking about Halliburton. We're talking about the CIA. You know, the war machine is telling them what to do, what to say. They just need someone that can at least read the teleprompter. And Joe Biden stopped being that. You know, he stopped being able to even just read the teleprompter. So they said, okay, we've got to go to our B option, which is Kamala.
And then look at this. There was no primary vetting.
I know. It's incredible.
There wasn't even anything the old-time way where you had convention ballots going on. The last time she put herself to the test, she had to withdraw early in the primary season because she wasn't doing anything at all. And then you have this other thing where, how do you jump from being the least popular vice president or president in the country's history, if you take the last 70-some years of polling, and all of a sudden you become a front runner? It just doesn't happen. But then you look at what's going on with the press, that, you know, I'm astonished at the press now. It's like they're the propaganda engines for the Democratic Party.
They've always been that, you know.
Well, no, they weren't. Not back when. You'd have a report that said, okay, Donald Trump claimed that so on and so forth. Meanwhile, his Democratic opponent made a counterclaim. You wouldn't have Donald Trump lied about this, or Donald Trump made a false assertion.
Yeah, you're right. I guess what I mean to say is that I think the media, I shouldn't say has always been Democratic. Whichever candidate was going to get them the war they wanted. And I think right now we are on the brink of another, they want World War III. I've been saying this for 2 years on my show. It's been very obvious the way that they're covering everything. We're going to get dragged into another war. And I don't think that I actually know, because he has said this, that Donald Trump is their war candidate. You know, Trump has been very much, he started out much more isolationist, full stop. He was like, every boy needs to come back home, America first. Now, he definitely has already said that he doesn't support what's happening in Ukraine, that we shouldn't be involved in Ukraine. That's not going to work for the war class. They're laundering money over there. I mean, I think they want to make this thing bigger. And Kamala is just an empty vessel. She'll do what they'll say. Trump is got his guts, you know, he's got his wits about him. He's going to say, I don't want to do this, I'm not going to do that. He's too strong of a person.
He's somebody actually in charge, not a figurehead.
Right.
Now, Bill Clinton.
And they can't have that.
Bill Clinton was a hillbilly, but he had leadership capacity and he was a strong man. I remember something that I saw him do that was very fascinating. 40-some years ago, they had a coalition down here in Arkansas, and they met up in Jonesboro at a synagogue. I think it was Jonesboro, and I went down there to consult with them, and they had an organization that had farm workers, League of Women Voters, Jewish Defense League, etc., and a bunch of ministers. And these night riders were coming by in flatbed trucks with shotguns and rifles, intimidating everybody. So they got the bright idea of, let's call the governor. He's a young guy. So they did. Bill Clinton showed up, buffed out dude, big, you know. And he had his Arkansas State Police guards, you know, and he made them wait inside the synagogue or church. And he gave his coat to the preacher, and there was this guy with a bullhorn over there agitating. He went over and knocked the thing out of his hand. The big guy picked him up, rammed him up against the wall. His feet were about this high off the ground, fished in his pocket, took his wallet out, looked through it, put it back in and said, your name's so-and-so, this is where you live. And if I see anybody, hear about anybody coming back here to mess with my constituents, I'm getting you. And he threw the guy down, and somebody came up with a shotgun. He punched him, butt stroked the guy with his own shotgun, and walked down the sidewalk, knocked 4 or 5 people to the ground, and said, anybody want a piece of this? I said, damn, all right, I'm impressed. But you see, they don't make them like that now for the Democratic Party. They don't have any give 'em hell Harrys. They don't, who was a captain in the artillery in World War I and decorated. They don't have any John F. Kennedys who had PT-109 chopped in two by a Japanese destroyer. They don't have any FDRs who was Secretary of the Navy from a family of warriors, least of all Teddy Roosevelt, who led the Rough Riders up with the 10th Cavalry up San Juan Hill. You don't have that. You don't even have Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was an interesting guy. You don't have people like that now. You've got some wishy-washy somebodies that would be nobodies if they didn't have the lifetime political connections where there is obvious corruption. You, for your entire adult life, have been on a government payroll, but you're a multimillionaire. It just doesn't equate. Not at all.
Right, right.
So, and by the way, you get people who are very vulnerable. And when you have somebody that's vulnerable, you can control them.
Emmanuel Macron, Barack Obama with his history, homosexual relationships.
Biden.
Yep, Biden.
Let me tell you about Biden.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, we're not going to get into Biden. We're going to continue this tomorrow. But I want to share a video with you. This is Kamala Harris yesterday. Yesterday she gave this talk. This is only a snippet. She was kind of rambling about war. Okay. It's sad to see Kamala elevated to a place where she is given she's the second highest person in in America, or actually in the world. We're talking about the Vice President of the United States. And we could say she's probably acting as the president, okay? She's taking cues because she doesn't know how to think for herself. She's taking cues from Liz Cheney and whoever's talking to her on this bullhorn or through her earpiece. That's what she's getting her direction from. But she doesn't have a clue what she's doing. Kamala Harris was on this is called something over party. Country over party. Let me just share this with you. Country over party. Let me make sure you can see. Okay, you can see it. Country over party. And the person that posted this named Greg Price, he says Kamala is now invoking World War II and Pearl Harbor in order to justify implementation of Liz Cheney foreign policy, which Kamala says that she completely agrees with. A vote for Kamala is a vote for World War III. Okay, like I said, she doesn't really know anything. We already know that Kamala Harris, like they're just repeating what I said before. Kamala Harris, her only job was being in government. She's never had a working job. She's not like you and us. She's always been a paid government shield, I guess you want to call it. But she hasn't even worked for the positions that she came to. I used to say, oh, at least she got elected to the Senate. She must have been doing a little bit something right, because you can't sleep your way to the Senate seat. But apparently she did something right, because we know that she consolidated that 5,000 counts of criminal charges of Steve Mnuchin and George Soros, that one West Bank, consolidated that and really dismissed the charge. Okay? And then later on, they funded her U.S. Senate seat without anybody, trying to, run against her. So Kamala Harris, she doesn't belong here. She does not belong in the position she's in. She's basically a manufactured candidate. But without further ado, just take a listen to this.
Bringing the allies together is because they...
And I really don't know what the hell she's talking about. I really don't. It's really incoherent. She's just rambling, but she's basically saying she's agreeing with the war.
They are fully aware of, and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II, remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation, and then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember, recent history. Europe remembers it well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends, isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made, and the other point I'd make is also check out where he's been on how he thinks about America's military and service members. One of the great, great American heroes, a prisoner of war, John McCain. Remember how he...
Okay, so we could see Kamala Harris I don't think she's smart enough to articulate, hey, this is what we need to do. Maybe Liz Cheney has some bullet points of just parroting of what she's saying. Back to the original start, what they were talking about, Candace Owens and Judge Joe Brown, they mentioned, actually Judge Joe Brown mentioned about women not being a part of war. It's usually the men. It's men's fault of creating war, creating conflicts throughout the world. But we could see 2 women, actually 3 women on stage, and we're talking about war. Would Kamala Harris say the same thing? Would she have the same tune if she would have birthed 2 sons? Raised 2 sons? Would she have the same tune? I don't think so. Because if anything, of course, you're I guess country over party. I don't know what that means. Of course, you want America to be the greatest country in the world. You don't want anybody to invade the country, but you don't want to be gun-ho and going around starting wars, and potentially your son has to be drafted into a war, an endless war, an unnecessary war. Kamala Harris, and I'm going to say this again, Kamala Harris, I believe women should not be a part of the world stage as far as running for the president of the United States because of this reason. I have to posture myself for people to look like, I have to posture myself. Oh, I mean what I said. Press the button, nuclear code, because you ain't listening to me. Instead of posturing yourself like Donald Trump did when he was talking to, I believe, ISIS or Afghanistan or whatever they said. He went into a meeting with the Taliban. He went into the meeting with one of the leaders of the Taliban, and they were losing a lot of soldiers. And he said, if any of my people have a hair injured on their head, you are going down. I think he said, I'm going to bomb you or I'm going to kill you or whatever. And he passed the note to the Taliban leader. The note was a picture of his house. And from that day forward, the Afghanistan soldiers, or not Afghanistan soldiers, but American soldiers, they stopped giving them a bunch of crap in Afghanistan. He didn't have to push a nuclear button or nuclear code. Remember, they were saying this is the mainstream media talking point. And I actually believe this. I actually believe the media. This is why we shouldn't listen to the media. I actually believe the media that Donald Trump was so unhinged that he was planning to start a war. And no, when he was in office, there were no wars being started because he didn't have to posture himself as, hey, you better look at me and I'm Donald Trump. No, he went in as a man, and he knew what he was capable of. He didn't have to overwhelm nobody because only women do that. Only women raise their voice. Look, when you at home, and you guys put it in the chat, when my husband is at home, the kids are doing what they're supposed to do, quiet as a church mouse. When I'm here by myself with my kids, I literally have to raise my voice for them to act right. And these are my children, let alone somebody else's children, my children. And sometimes your children give you more shit than, outside kid. It all depends. But these are my children. So this is why I'm saying that women do not have a place when it comes to the American the United States presidency. I actually would have voted. I think Hillary would have been better in position because at least she has ties. She has some type of history. She has bloodline. She has children. She has some type of investment. And she's been in she will have guidance from, I guess, Bill Clinton. So more Hillary than her. But still, she really doesn't have a place. She will probably have to overposture herself for people to listen to her. And you heard Candace Owens when Tucker interviewed Putin. He said he don't even listen to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. He's just listening to the CIA, what they're saying. So Kamala Harris is a tool. She shouldn't be here. She doesn't deserve to be here. We don't need to elect her. She's anti-American, anti-Christ, anti-woman, anti-children, anti-heritage or lineage or survivorship. Every anti that you talk about, oh, I'm going to leave a legacy. She's anti-legacy. She's anti that, but she is pro-war. That's what she is. She's pro-kill. She loves killing. That's what she loves. She is batshit crazy. So you could vote for her if you want to. I wouldn't advise it. But if you have children of the age that they could, military age, and they might get drafted, because we know the military head count is very low. We know it's low because of Joe Biden's leadership and the COVID restrictions, because Joe Biden decided to fire a bunch of soldiers because they wouldn't take the COVID vaccine. They're going to induce a draft, you guys. What do you think that's going to happen? You think these military age boys are going to just be walking around? No, they're going to round them up. No, we have a draft. You didn't sign up. So we're going to arrest your ass. So you're going to either be in prison or you're going to fight in this war. That's what they did. And that's what they're planning to do. You got to face that reality. If we go into World War III, you need to face that reality. So you vote for Kamala Harris if you want to. Just kiss your military age son goodbye. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Evie said, nah, Hillary way right. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. President Trump even brought hostages home without having to pay our enemies a cent. Exactly. Why are you paying anybody? You have the military backing of the force. What the hell are you negotiating with terrorists for? Why are you negotiating with them? Keratin, she's anti-everything pretty much. Michael Lewis, Trump has never been good for this country. Michael Lewis, I don't know what country you talking about, but yeah, he's been great for America. Thanks. Kamala is setting women back 200 years. Cheers, dingbat. Thank you, Nomo. Anti-God, she's evil. The election is literally good versus evil. What happened to my body, my choice? I'm not fighting into a war. You are. If Kamala gets in, you could just basically kiss I don't know how old you are, LeBron, but you could kiss your freedom days goodbye. We talking about the job growth and all this and the economy. We're not going to have an economy. We're going to have a bunch of men being drafted into this World War III. You have right now China and Russia colluding together. China is training soldiers, with some of our enemies. You have Iran being funded. They now have a slush fund because they're now able, America has lifted sanctions, so they're now able to sell their stuff throughout, their oil throughout. So they have a high slush fund to fund wars. And then you have Iran posturing themselves saying death to America, death to Israel. You have Putin. Putin is not trying to give up territory because they think Ukraine encroached on their territory anyway. They're not part of NATO. So they feel like they're encroaching on their territory. That's why that happened anyway. That's why they're in a war now. And then I haven't seen a lot of talk about this, but we know North Korea bombed. This was a warning attack. They bombed South Korea last Monday. They said it was a warning. They bombed the unused road for now, and they said it was a warning. So you have all these players that's against us. And what do you think that's going to happen if Kamala Harris is elected? Because she's posturing herself as, hey, I'm going to be a strong leader. I'm going to don't push me, because one thing you do that I don't like, I'm going to drop the flag and say it's time to get down and dirty. We going to war. I was making a joke of Democrats saying woman, my body, my choice, being hypocrites. I'm 53. Okay. Kennard the DJ, is Kamala still offering the 2-for-1 promo and lap dances or no? North Korean soldiers are now in Ukraine. If you had to pick Kamala or Tahoe Tiffany. Oh, God. I don't know about that. Kennard the DJ. Somebody's Lexi's laughing. Yeah, I had to pick Hillary hands down, but I don't know about no Tahoe Tiffany. Oh my God, that's even worse than Kamala. Anywho, you guys, I really appreciate you viewing this stream, or just sticking through it. Tomorrow I'm going to view the other half, and he gets in talking about Joe Biden. Judge Joe Brown talks about Joe Biden, and he gets into some things that I mentioned prior about Kennedy's assassination. So I want to view that. I think it's very interesting, just to shed light on some of the things that we may not know. Of the information they give us bits and pieces of what they want us to know, for us to paint a picture, or they paint a picture for us. And we know the mainstream media are extreme propagandists. Okay, they're extremely biased, so we can't just let them tell us what we should be feeling, how we should view a candidate. We have to make those intelligent choices, or more informed choices. In order for us to do that, we have to do our own research. We can't just turn on CNN and let them tell us what we should hear. We have to now question the journalists. And I want to point out, if you guys don't believe me, remember, I don't know if you heard, George Soros was on the docket to purchase up to 220 news outlets. I don't know, in a form of radio and a form of TV. This was about a month ago. I don't know if they actually went through, if they approved the purchases, but just imagine One person is controlling the mass media news outlets. This is a problem, you guys. And so when you don't have any competition, we could all stream, we say the same things and parrot all the talking points and spread a mass propaganda of what we want you to believe. Okay, not what is true, but what we want you to believe. This is a problem. And this shouldn't be in, and I hope they stop this purchase, but this shouldn't be in America because if anything, we should have the freedom of information and freedom of true information, not misinformation, not disinformation like CNN and MSNBC and The View love using, but the freedom of information, and it should be wholly, I guess, what is the word I want to use? Free of being tainted from the people that own it. One person shouldn't own the mass networks. It shouldn't be. So anyway, I really appreciate every single last one of you. I will talk to you tomorrow.